Claire Wiley had always craved structure. As the senior editor at Pinebridge Publishing, a mid-sized multi-line house nestled in the literary heart of Boston, her days were built around red pens, polished prose, and strong coffee. Claire loved the job. She took comfort in the rhythm of pages flipping, deadlines approaching, and authors' nervous excitement, helping artists craft their very own masterpieces. She loved knowing that people from all walks of life got enjoyment from the works she helped to make it into the marketplace. It gave her the illusion of control. Creative, pretty, funny and intelligent, Claire still struggled with feeling like she was enough. Ever since the accident tore her world apart in a single day, she needed that feeling of control. After the car accident that took her parents 5 years ago, that illusion was all she had. It had taken months of therapy to rebuild her life from the cracked glass and broken steel. The soul-searching and confronting her own demons had been hard, but in the end she had emerged stronger and able to make sense of the world again. But Clark, her younger brother, had only grown more distant. Now 23, Clark still hadn't found his footing. He refused therapy, and Claire often found herself picking up the emotional pieces he scattered like breadcrumbs. Clark had tried every avenue except professional therapy. He had briefly forayed into drugs, but didn't like how they made him feel, fortunately. The one vice he had not been able to escape from was gambling. The dopamine rush filled that empty spot inside him, if only for a little while at a time. Fortunately, he had thus far been able to mostly control the addiction, keeping his bets small and controlled, and had been able to hold himself back enough to not bankrupt himself and Claire. Josh Benning had been a new chapter. He was charming, thoughtful, with the kind of soft-spoken confidence Claire didn't realize she craved. They met at a charity gala hosted by the publishing house. He had been the platonic plus one of another editor whom he had gone to college with. When he and Claire had met, he had seemed deeply attracted to her almost instantly, and she had been fascinated by something about him. He told her he was a telecommunications specialist, frequently contracted for high-risk offshore work on oil rigs and the ships that supplied them and transported their cargo. Now it was only a few months later, but something about him stuck. Their connection was like the eye of a hurricane, calm, rare, and intense. Within a week of meeting Josh, she had discovered she was not interested in dating anyone else. He felt the same. Claire, he had whispered in her ear just that morning as they shared a lingering goodbye in her apartment, "You make it harder and harder to leave." "Well, Mr. Benning, you keep thinking that. Maybe soon you won't have to leave me anymore. You know you spend most of your time over here instead of in your own apartment. Why don't you just move in here, with me?" "Really, Claire?" Josh's face lit up with excitement. "If you were serious, I would love that. Do you think Clark would be okay with that?" "You are such a sweetie," Claire smirked. "Clark likes you more than anyone I have ever dated. I know he would be fine with it." He leaned in for a long sizzling kiss, and when he pulled away they were both a little breathless. Then his phone buzzed. He thumbed open the text he got and groaned. A sudden, violent storm had damaged a rig in the Gulf. Their internet, computer systems, and half their other electronics were down. Josh kissed her forehead apologetically. He moved into her bedroom and quickly came out with his overnight bag, looking outside at the rain pelting the street. "I am so sorry, babe. I have to go. I will run back by my apartment and grab my duffel and kit. I will be flying out pretty fast. Hopefully this job won't take too long, and then I can get back to you and we can make this place ours." Claire squealed in delight and hugged him tight once more. He pulled himself away with difficulty and disappeared into the rain. Claire spent the rest of the day torn between the ache of missing Josh and the anticipation of his return, and their moving in together. The next day, a bright and sunny summer day, Claire sat at her desk, distractedly sipping lukewarm coffee while talking with Natalie, her college roommate and closest confidant at work. "You miss him," Natalie said, half teasing. "Girl, you got it bad." "Of course I do. I thought I'd be good at this long-distance thing, and I would be relieved when he had to leave and give me some space, but it's more than that, isn't it?" Natalie leaned in expectantly. Claire hesitated. "Yeah, I think I love him." Natalie smiled. "I knew it. Then tell him. Since Clark likes him, maybe he can help you get Clark into therapy finally. You can't save everyone alone." As Natalie left to prep for a manuscript meeting, Claire's phone rang. Clark. Claire felt a pang of worry. Clark almost never called during the day. He called her 3 or 4 times a week, but usually only after they were both off work. "Claire, I need you." Clark's voice was unsteady, broken, panicky. 20 minutes later, she met him in the alley behind an old gym he used to frequent. He was pale, sweat dotting his forehead. He seemed frightened. "I screwed up," he whispered, eyes darting. Claire pulled him into a tight hug. "Tell me everything." Clark related he had gone to a club where he liked to gamble last night. This time there was a high-stakes game that had moved into the back room. One of the players was a real estate guy that Clark knew, having worked for him before as a surveyor. He invited Clark to come in and play with the big boys. Clark could not resist the flattery that followed. At first it had gone well, and Clark had had a rare confluence of luck and skill that left him in the lead. A slick, successful-looking older player in the game had complemented Clark's boldness and skill. A few hours later the pot was huge and only Clark and the slick older player were left. Clark had a great hand and knew he was about to change his life with this win. Both men went all in. Clark was so sure he had the pot. He raised again, betting money he didn't have and could not possibly cover. He knew he would win. Clark had confidently revealed his hand. The other player, Evan, then threw his down. It was one of only 4 combinations that could have possibly beaten Clark's hand. It was nearly impossible that the man had it, but there it was. Clark reluctantly confessed to losing over $50,000. It was only then that he had learned the other player was Evan Brock, a notorious high-ranking figure in Boston's underworld. Claire had heard the name before, in whispers and headlines, and real crime reporting. Brock didn't allow debts to wait. Ever. When Clark tried to walk away with empty promises to pay up, Brock sent a clear, chilling message. "Pay up or your family pays for you." This morning Clark had found an envelope on the stoop of the porch of their parents' house where he still lived. Inside were several pictures of Claire leaving her apartment, getting into her car, pulling through a Starbucks, walking into the publishing house. Along with the photos was a note that said simply, "Pay up or your sister pays for you." It was signed E. Brock. "Claire, I am so sorry. What are we going to do? He said I have 48 hours, but I don't trust him to wait that long." Claire's heart pounded. She called Josh immediately. Voicemail. She left a message, voice trembling. "Josh, I know you're probably out of service range, but I need you. Clark is in trouble, real trouble, and so am I. Please, if you can hear this, help us." By nightfall, they were on the run. They ran by Claire's apartment, and she grabbed her laptop and all the cash she had. Clark, though terrified, stayed close. Their first stop was Clark's house, the house they grew up in. The familiarity brought a painful pang to Claire's chest, but it also felt like the safest place to regroup. "I know you have a hard time coming here, sis, but..." They barely made it inside when headlights swept across the front yard. Clark froze mid-sentence. "Did you tell anyone we were coming here?" Claire hissed, glancing around wildly. "No one, I swear." A hard knock echoed through the back door, followed by the unmistakable sound of a window sliding open upstairs. "Go," Claire yelled. They darted out the side door. Their dad had built a tiny addition as a mudroom for the super active kids years ago. From the outside it was hidden by their mother's old vine trellis. If you did not know it was there, it was impossible to see from the street. They burst out next to the driveway, cut through a hedge, and found themselves running down a narrow alley formed by their hedge and their neighbor's hedge. They didn't stop until they reached Claire's car 3 blocks away. Starving and shaking, they pulled into a dimly lit roadside diner just outside the city. Claire tried to calm her nerves, ordering grilled cheese and soup while Clark went with pancakes. They had barely taken a bite when the bell over the door jingled. 2 bulky men in leather jackets scanned the room and locked eyes with Clark. "Move," Claire whispered. They slid out the back door into the kitchen, startling the cook, and pushed through the swinging door to the alley. Clark kicked over a trash can to slow the thugs, and they ran down the block, diving into the car. Claire screeched out of the lot, tires squealing. She thought she saw the headlights of a pursuing car, but traffic got so heavy she could not be sure. They drove in silence, the weight of danger pressing down. After talking about what to do next for a short time, they ended up at a grimy, low-end motel nestled against the outskirts of a wooded area. They thought that would be their best bet to stay unseen. "It's not much," Claire said, "but at least it's quiet." The room smelled like mildew and stale cigarettes. The TV didn't work, and the sheets looked questionable at best. But they were too exhausted to care. Claire collapsed on the bed while Clark sat near the window, peeking through the curtains. "You should get some rest, too," Claire suggested. "I can't sleep," Clark said. "I've put you in danger. Put us both in danger. The least I can do is keep a watch." Claire wanted to stay up, wanted to comfort him, but she was just so tired. She set her head down on the pillow, and fell deeply asleep. "They found us," he whispered an hour later, reaching over to shake Claire urgently. Claire bolted up as a car pulled into the lot. The same men from the diner stepped out, surveying the area. Clark acted fast. We'll have to go out the window. Claire grabbed her bag while Clark rummaged through his backpack and pulled out their father's old Swiss Army knife. They slipped out the bathroom window just as a knock rattled the door. Clark crept around the end of the building to the front of the thug's car and, with trembling hands, stabbed at the tires. The blade punctured the rubber of 2 tires with a hiss. "Go," he shouted. They ran toward the woods behind the motel. Shouts followed them. Gunfire cracked in the air, but the trees gave them cover. They reached the road and tried to wave down passing cars. No one would stop. "Quick," Claire hissed, "let's head back to the hotel, maybe we can grab my car and get away." Clark nodded and they both ran back to the hotel. The men chasing them were nowhere to be seen. They dove into Claire's car and sped away. Claire saw sparks on the pavement as a gunshot barely missed the car. Claire drove into the city into the area near the publishing house where she worked. She knew the streets here well. "Did you see how fast they came back out of the woods? They couldn't have known we circled back," Clark said. Finally, they collapsed in a quiet alley behind an auto shop. Claire looked at Clark, panting. "They're tracking us." "What?" "Your phone. It's the only way they keep finding us." Without hesitation, she grabbed it and jumped out of the car. Running to the end of the alley, she spotted a pickup truck idling at a red light. She sprinted forward, tossed the phone into the open bed, and ducked back just as the light turned green. "We sleep in the car tonight," she said when she slid back into the car next to Clark. "No arguments here," Clark replied. They curled up in the back seat, hidden beneath spare blankets and coats. Exhaustion finally overtook them. Claire woke up to the glint of sunlight bouncing off chrome. A man was standing beside the driver's window. He raised a gun and tapped the glass. Claire gasped. The man sneered. "You're harder to find than I expected. Mr. Brock sends his regards." Claire froze. Then came a muffled thump. The man crumpled to the pavement, unmoving. She turned. It was Josh, dressed in a black turtleneck, black blazer and pants instead of the flannel she was used to seeing him wearing. In his right hand was a sleek pistol with a silencer. He rushed to her, eyes scanning for more threats. "You okay?" Claire jumped out of the car and hugged Josh tightly, then realizing what had just happened she pulled back. "You have a gun. Why do you have a gun?" Josh gave a tight nod. "Because I'm not really a telecom expert. I work for a branch of United Nations security that doesn't officially exist. Quote, I go where the threats are and solve problems, but not usually like this." He gestured at the body on the ground. Claire blinked, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Not allowed to. That is kind of the point of being a covert agent. But when I got your message, I knew I had to come back. For you. You just killed that man?" "Yeah," Josh replied, seeming uncomfortable at her surprised reaction. "I was very afraid that was what he was going to do to you too." "Give him a break, sis," Clark piped in. "Your boyfriend totally saved our bacon. We should call the police." Claire replied firmly. "I agree, but not from here, and not standing around on the street. I know a place we can go." "I have a car nearby," Josh said. "Let's take that. This guy's partners are certainly still looking for your car. How could this man have found us when we were randomly parked on the street?" Claire asked. Josh fished around in the wheel wells of Claire's car. On the back right side he came up with a small black box. "Tracking device," he said, looking at it closely, "GPS signal, magnetically attached." Josh dropped it on the ground and smashed it under the heel of his shoe. "Can we get out of here now?" Clark asked, looking around nervously. "Good idea," Josh nodded with a smile. The three of them holed up in a safe house arranged by Josh. There, they formed a plan. They couldn't run forever. Claire insisted they turn the tables. Josh and Clark agreed. Josh made a quick set of phone calls. In each one it sounded like he was using some sort of code to speak with a woman on the other end. Josh would speak and then the other person on the other end would speak. Occasionally they would both use strings of letters. Claire was sure he must be speaking to people from other government agencies. Finally, after several conversations, Josh hung up. He looked resolved but not happy. "We lure Brock into a trap," Josh said, his voice flat. "But it means putting ourselves in his path." "No," Claire said, "just me. I'll be the bait." "Absolutely not," Josh and Clark said in unison. "He wants me. If I offer myself as the payment, he'll come. I think he believes that if he has me he can control Clark." "Why would he want to do that?" Josh asked. Claire turned to Clark. "Think about what you do. Surveying. You supervise a very trusted crew." Clark nodded slowly and thoughtfully. Can you think of any ways a criminal boss could make you change surveys and use that to make money? Yes, Clark answered reluctantly, I can. There are a lot of new land contracts opening downtown. The city is trying to rezone and redevelop some old manufacturing plots that are no longer used. If a criminal could control the way the surveys read, they could make certain they controlled key plots. That makes sense, Josh said. Based on what Evan Brock has done in the past, I think you're onto something. Josh took a deep breath and looked at clearing Clark. We'll need to move in quickly, Clark, to make sure he doesn't hurt Claire. Josh finally relented, jaw tight. He handed Claire a matchbook-sized black tracker. Press the side button twice. I'll come running. They chose a warehouse Josh's contacts said Brock owned but didn't use anymore. A skeletal, rust-ridden place near the shipyard. Midnight. Rain fell in sheets. Claire walked in alone, the hollow place in the pit of her stomach turning colder with every step. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete as she stepped beneath flickering overhead lights. Brock was already there, standing under a leaking skylight with 4 men. 2 close by, 2 watching the flanks. He wore a tailored charcoal suit and an expression carved from granite. Ms. Wiley? Brave, or stupid? Evan asked, a smirk on his face. Claire didn't flinch. Just ending the game. You want a hostage? I'm right here. He stepped forward, shoes crunching on glass. Where's your brother? Gone. You'll have to settle for me, Claire said, backing away a few steps despite her resolve. Evan Brock in person had an air of calm and malevolent confidence that she had not expected. Brock raised his hand. Grab her. 2 of his men moved, fast. Claire moved faster. She hit the tracker button twice and spun away, ducking behind a steel column. Brock swore, and yelled at his men to move in. Hiding won't help you. It will go easier if you cooperate. An instant later, the warehouse exploded with motion. 2 doors could be heard opening noisily with a rusted metal screech several feet from each other. Josh came in from the west wall, low and fast, silenced, pistol raised. One of Brock's thugs ripped a pistol from a shoulder holster under his jacket and whirled on Josh. Snake quick, Josh responded. First shot, center mass. The thug dropped to the floor groaning. A second thug raised his weapon, but Josh, in a blur of motion, was already inside his guard, turning, locking and then snapping the thug's wrist and driving an elbow into his solar plexus followed by a lightning-fast elbow to the temple. The man wheezed and crumpled. Clark came from the opposite door, a crowbar in hand, swinging with adrenaline-fueled purpose. He clocked a thug across the side of the head with a feral snarl of, "Don't touch my sister." The man dropped, blood painting the crates behind him. The third thug turned, gun drawn, and fired. Clark cried out, clutching his side, falling to one knee. Josh turned at a sound behind him, and rocked back as a round punched through his shoulder. Josh surged forward, tackling the shooter to the ground, fists blurring in rapid, brutal strikes. 3 hits. Throat, temple, chin. The thug stopped moving. Claire didn't stay idle. A crash came from the front of the warehouse. Claire knew what that meant. The FBI had finally arrived and decided enough had happened that they could move in. Claire stepped out from behind the beam she had used for shelter. When she saw Brock and thought about what he had tried to do to her and Josh, she felt rage. When Brock moved to flee, she cut him off, steel in her eyes. He swung at her, wild. She ducked and drove her knee into his thigh, making him stagger. Josh grabbed him from behind with his good arm and slammed him against a support beam. You're done, Brock. Some friends have arrived who want to speak with you. Brock snarled, struggling, gasping for breath from Josh's punishing tackle. Josh twisted his arm and pinned him down until the sounds of heavy-booted feet burst into the warehouse. Floodlights washed over the warehouse from the outside. The FBI flooded in, black blazers and baseball caps bearing their white logo in large letters, badges on their belts, or hanging from their necks. There must have been a dozen or more agents. They quickly fanned out and secured Brock and his men. Claire dropped to her knees beside Clark, pressing her hands to his bleeding side. You're okay. You're okay. She smiled, hoping it was true. An FBI agent came up. She took Claire's shoulders and pulled her back gently. It's okay. I am also a paramedic. I've got your brother. Clark grimaced. I think I actually hit someone. Josh, pale but upright, limped to her side. Blood soaked his jacket. She touched his face, eyes full of tears. You came like you said you would. You saved me again. Always, Josh said, his voice weak with blood loss, but the resolve in his eyes fierce and clear. Weeks passed. Josh healed, though he remained on leave. Clark agreed to start therapy. You saved me, Clark told Claire over coffee one morning. I'll never be able to repay that. You don't have to, little brother. Just get better. That's all I need. That night, Claire and Josh stood on her balcony, looking over the lit skyline. So, Claire said, half smiling. Any more secrets from me? No more secrets. I promise. Just us. I love you, Claire Wiley. He leaned in, kissing her gently. Let's start our real story now. She took his hand. I love you, Josh Benning, she said with a grin. And they did.